Welcome to our work session for October. Glad you could be with us tonight. We'd like to begin each meeting with a moment of silence and would invite you to join us if you care to. Thank you. First on the agenda is welcome and pledge of allegiance from Walhalla Middle School. Mr. Dixon.
I'm just going to introduce Ms. Robinson and his people and let them.
Okay. All right.
This is Daniel Davis. He's going to lead us in the pledge.
Look, there's a flag. Now's our chance. Now's our chance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Very good job.
That's the very end. Can we go to the very end? So Daniel is a student in our functional self-contained class at Walhalla Middle. We are super proud of Daniel. He came to us as a nonverbal student, and as you can tell, he has made great strides in his education and just in his social environment. We are really proud of him. He also was able to be interviewed at our Alveus all-school meeting in front of the entire school, and he did a really great job. And so we're just really proud of Daniel, and he is a huge asset to Walhalla Middle. So we have Allison Peoples. She is a 7th grade math teacher. I teach functional special education. We have Austin Dickerson. He is in the 8th grade. His mother, Nicole, is with him, and Daniel's mom, Lindy, is with him, and Mr. Dixon is in math.
We're going to go ahead and start talking about Alveus School Intervention Program that we're implementing at Walhalla Middle School. We are proud to say that we started this from day one at school with a set routine. So every Monday we have razor class and we have a high-low. So every teacher has a set number of students. It might be your students that you picked, but a lot of students or teachers decided to go into a random draft, and so we didn't know who our students were. So I have students that I don't teach, which has actually helped with facilitating teacher relationships, not just within our students that we have. We do high-lows where students talk about their highs and lows of the day, and guidance counselors have actually realized that we've gotten a lot of problems taken care of first thing in the morning because we're able to have that open communication. On Tuesdays, just like we spoke, we have full class or full grade level in the gym rallies. They last about 30 minutes, but it's a whole school involvement where we have guest speakers, student interviews where students from different classes get to be interviewed by other students, other teachers, and we're starting to implement people from our community. So the next month in November will be thankfulness, so we're going to start having the sheriff's department, the police department, the fire department, and students will they'll interview people from the community so the students can see. This month is sportsmanship, and we actually had students from the high school come and we interview students from the high school. So we're building that communication and community within, and then in December we'll be doing gratefulness and starting and talking about gratitude and giving, and we'll have people from the community with charities and stuff talking about that. We also have so this is what it looks like. Razor rallies, we also have monthly razor rallies where we'll actually have time set aside with a guest speaker from the community and talk, and we'll have different lessons that we have implemented based on the need of what we're seeing as teachers and faculty and staff of the needed areas. We also follow lesson plans on every Wednesday during our razor time that talk and build rapport, but also give them good community involvement and it's all themed based. So that's what we're doing with OBCP currently. And we just got our results back last week, so the committee, I know, is a little anxious to actually dive in and see what it talks about the hot spots, it talks about parent involvement, it talks about if the kids feel like if they're being bullied, where are they being bullied, who's being bullied. It doesn't identify individual students, but it gives us a general idea so we can actually start targeting that in our rallies and our different activities that we're doing. So that's a little bit just of that. Here's some pictures of what we've already done. If you notice in the top left, we have Ms. Nash interviewing a student, or a teacher being interviewed by a student with help there. She's also talking to the football players in the middle, top middle, and they're all talking about what they think good sportsmanship is, since that was this month. We also have student interviews. We had themed rally where we were 70s, help, I need somebody, letting everybody know that they do need help and how to get the help. We also had the chorus, sing the national anthem in the middle, and then we also have teacher feedback in the bottom right. So now we're going to look here.
So we are very supportive of becoming one of the top 10 districts, and we think that Walhalla Middle is going to make that happen with our character. And it's interesting. I run Spartan races, and before the race begins, they put you in this chute, and they kind of hype you up, and they say, look to your left and look to your right. You will not let them fail. You will draw strength from them, and they will draw strength from you. Today's the day you rise to glory. And that's what I see at Walhalla Middle. We see our special needs students interviewing. We see our students participating that normally wouldn't participate. We see relationships with teachers who they didn't even know were teachers in the building. And so we see this leaning on each other and this strong character that we're seeing. We have service learners that come to our classroom each day, and Daniel keeps telling you about Chance. Chance is at the high school. But at the rally that Daniel was interviewed, we were able to surprise him with Chance. And this is the impact our student learners have. Daniel still to this day puts a chair next to his desk for Chance to come help. These students help with academics, they help with social learning. As you can see on the far right, that's Tristan Woodall. He is helping one of our students learn how to do fractions with his hands. And so they are valuable to us, and it's just part of the character of Walhalla, where we are all in this together, and that's really what's moving us forward. I would like to introduce you to Austin. Austin is a great young man. He is in the 8th grade. He wants to be a chef and own a food truck when he grows up. He volunteers regularly at church in the kids ministry. And the person over that ministry says that they can't do it without him. He was born with cerebral palsy and a disorder that causes involuntary movements. His mom told me that he didn't walk until much later, and he was not supposed to walk or run, and that it would be very difficult. But Austin is now part of what sport? Cross country for Walhalla Middle and Walhalla High. Why do you run?
Because the doctors told me that I couldn't run.
And what do you like about it?
It's fun. It's fun to run. Yeah.
So I think Austin really identifies with the character of Walhalla Middle. So when most people would give up because it's too hard, or most people would not even try, he not only tries, but he succeeds. And we have a little video of Austin finishing.
Come on, Austin!
So I agree a lot with his brother there. Like, we just were so proud of him when we watched the video. We were like, Austin, Austin. But he and Walhalla Middle just kind of defines this quote: endurance is not just the ability to bear a hard thing, but to turn it into glory. And that's what we are trying to do at Walhalla through Oveus and through making character count. And these two students are great examples of doing just that.
Thank all of you. Awesome, both of you guys. Enjoyed it very much.
We had certificates for them too.
Oh, did we? Okay.
Mr. Dixon. So Daniel and Austin, we had a certificate made for you because we're so proud of just the example that you guys are for all of us to admire. So Daniel, if you want to come up, Mr. Lee will give a certificate to you. Great job. Stay up here. Stay up here. We're going to get your picture in just a second. And Austin, you want to come up? Why don't you two guys stand right here? Mr. Hamby's going to tweet your picture out here in just a minute. All right. Good job. Thank you, guys.
Celebrating our successes, Dr. Thorson.
Yeah, just a couple of things I wanted to mention to you. I know some of you were involved in these, but one of the last weeks in September, which was Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, our Student Behavioral Health Committee collaborated with some folks from outside the district who had a particular interest in that topic, and we had 3 different events, one in each attendance area, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night, just called It's Time to Talk, It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And the purpose of that was to make our families and community members aware of resources in the school district, but also outside the school district in the community, places where those struggling with mental health issues could go. Those 3 events then culminated in Saturday mornings, a hike for hope, and that was hosted at the Blue Ridge Electric Co-op campus at the corner of 11 and 123, and that was just a really fun morning, a very positive event for the community as well as for the school district. Had a lot of student attendance at that Saturday morning event, and we did a little short hike around the nature trail at Blue Ridge Electric, and it was just really a positive event. I think want to appreciate Ms. Simmons and her staff, that behavioral health team, for putting that together, because it was something really good for the community. And then also we've got a lot of student activities going on right now, so a lot of positivity. The West Oak Band in particular has won a couple of competitions in the last few weekends. I think Seneca Girls Golf won a region championship. And Mr. Hamby told me just before the meeting, I don't have the details, but we have a swim team now that's sponsored through the South Carolina High School League, and we have had some success there as well. We'll try to get more detail on that. But just a lot going on. It's a busy fall. October is, we're in full swing with all of our fall sports, and classes are well underway now, so things are going well. Been a positive start to the school year. So.
Very
I got
good.
this at you.
You want to share?
I've got it. We had 3 members of our swim. We have a combined team for the district, and so they compete in the 3A. And we had 3 members of our team that qualified with their time for the state championships, which were this weekend. Chelsea Burkhart, who is at Walhalla Middle School, placed 7th in the 200 freestyle and 5th in the 500 freestyle. And then Micah Zellers of Seneca High won a bronze medal for 3rd place in the 100-meter backstroke and 4th place in the 50 freestyle. And then Zane Prater from West Oak also qualified in the 200 freestyle and the 100 butterfly.
Very good.
Good. And I anticipate that we'll probably get a little more competitive in that sport when the YMCA facility opens and we have a consistent practice location. I would think that may get a little better for us. So we're excited about that next year.
Anything else?
That's it.
Next is approval of tonight's agenda, October 14th work session. Any comments on it? Without objection, we will approve the agenda. The agenda for October 14th is approved. Public comment, Ms. Gibson?
To you, Mr. Jeff Underwood.
Mr. Underwood, come on up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, and district personnel. First off, I want to start this by saying that while it may seem at times that I'm putting the board under, or the district under attack, I'm not attacking anyone. I've been approached by numerous parents and teachers that are not willing to come forward and discuss the survey, the parent survey, and the schedule change that was a big topic about a month ago, I believe, after the last meeting. I've known people at the district office, some taught me as much as 30 years ago. Yeah, it's been that long still.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But
You're getting old.
there was a lot of concerns, and I guess I kind of got nominated to come forward and speak about it. So bear with me. I hope I make some good points and some things to think about in discussion that I'm sure everyone has, but maybe from our perspective a little more. Liar, liar, pants on fire. That's what we used to say as kids running around the playground of our schools in this county when you caught somebody in a lie or a fib. Kids lie out of fear, for personal gain, or lack of ability to process the situation they're currently in. But we're not kids anymore. You and I are professionals hired as government representatives and employees to do a job, do it honestly, with honor, and with the #1 goal of serving others to help make our community a better place to live. Adults lie. Adults lie out of fear, personal gain, or lack of ability to process the situation they're currently in. But here's the difference. The consequences are and should be harsher when adults get caught. We know better, but we get so determined to push for change, push agendas, or have things our way that we start the justification process. It appears the school district became so blind in its desire to change the school calendar that it made the fatal error of taking liberties with the data. Presenting data of a survey in a fashion loses trust of anyone paying attention to it and called into question the professionalism of the district. When I went to grad school, I was being taught research methodology. The two most important things you had to do was ensure the integrity of the research and test the hypothesis against the data for support. But if the data didn't support the hypothesis, you could not conclude to move forward with the change proposed. This is called providing empirical data to support making changes to any program, followed by strategic planning. To implement change, we chose to ignore it and manipulate the data and present findings as fact to the school board to move forward with a calendar change that was not supported again. Here's a question directly to the board. Did any of you attempt to fill out the survey? I did twice, because I had to last year, twice. Same as this year. When I filled out the comment section last year and hit the submit button, all my responses disappeared and the survey did not submit. If I wasn't paying attention, I would have thought the survey was submitted. So this year, before hitting the submit button, I copied all my responses, hit the submit button, and voila, the same exact thing happened. So I put my responses to the questions again, pasted my comments, hit the submit button again, and then my survey was submitted. So this got me curious, so I filled out the survey again without commenting, hit submit, and it showed it was accepted again. There was no CAPTCHA codes, no apparent controls, and it appeared that I could have sat there and submitted a response as many times as I wanted. If that's the case, the survey loses all integrity even without numbers being changed. By having children of a different school age, from elementary to middle school, and after next year high school, there's also an immediate financial impact for my family if we start the high schools and middle schools earlier. $200 for me, and that's with my mother-in-law keeping the children. So daycare and for others could be as much as $400 or $500 just for that 1 week. Between that and the loss of family time, and part of the reason that many of your educators do this job is so they can stay at home during that summer break and those long December breaks. Any time lost with the family is valuable. There's opportunities outside the district that I've heard teachers discussing if they keep losing that summertime where we keep pushing towards year-round calendar, you're going to lose educators. My wife and I both have master's degrees, are career professionals approaching 20 years of experience and slightly over 21 years respectively. Are products of the Oconee County school system, public and private universities, and believe with every fiber of our being in this public school system. But we've also learned that when it's all said and done, all you have is your name and your word. If I lie to the public as a law enforcement professional, I will lose my job. If I change evidence or commit perjury on the witness stand, I'll go to jail. If a teacher lies to their students or their principal, I would expect them to lose their job. As professionals, we're held to a higher standard, not given permission to bend the standards to accommodate our agenda. The school district has continued to push calendar changes at the parents and faculty of this county for numerous years, and has been voted down year after year because they've yet to provide a shred of empirical data to show us why our children would benefit. The start times were staggered last year based on another educational system, and it may benefit the older kids. The only thing that did was make the rat race that no one in the room right now, well, I won't say no one, most in this room don't still participate in, make it that much more hectic. And my middle school child still has to get up at the exact same time as the elementary child because they both rival me. The professional thing to do would be to study the real reason we want to make the change, perform thorough research with data that shows the benefit you seek to achieve, and present it completely unbiased. And then let the parents and teachers decide and abide by their decision. As a district, you are the professionals and decision makers for classroom content and instruction and everything else that goes on within the walls of these school buildings. I don't pretend to know how to advise on that, and will always defer to your expertise. But I do understand families, I understand data, and I understand the truth. Please stop browbeating parents and faculty into submitting the unwanted calendar and schedule changes when the problems caused outweigh any perceived benefits, and most importantly, be the professionals you are. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. You have anything?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say, and I've pulled it up and I'll play it with the microphone, there was absolutely no lie told. I know that we had a certain media outlet that accused that the very next day, but I can show you the video clip, and I don't believe you were here, but I sat right here and said, I don't want to misrepresent what the survey said. It said 70% of people were willing to give it a shot. That's not a lie. That's exactly what the survey said. And for you to stand there and talk about how adults lie is completely inaccurate, I can disagree all day long. That's perfectly fine. But you sat there and called me a liar.
Me too.
And Mr. Hamby a liar. And that's inappropriate. And you weren't here at the meeting, at least I don't remember.
No, sir, I was not.
So did you watch the video of that meeting?
No, sir.
That video, I clearly told all 5 board members, I'm not trying to misrepresent. And I told them, they had the survey in front of them. That was not, so reading the editorial in the Journal, which also called Mr. Hamby and me liars, without, I mean, really, here's the video. You can look at it.
1502 on the video.
Well, the question says, or the answer response says on willing to try, no, I don't want the change, but willing to try.
Right.
So that does not mean they want the change.
And I didn't present it as that. I presented it as willing to give it a shot.
Exactly. 71% willing to give it a shot.
And that's true. That's accurate. And willing to give it a shot, to me, means I understand the value of having the semester in before Christmas break. And there is no right or wrong. We can study this over and over, and at the end of the day, we're going to have people disagree on it. But there are 3 academic reasons for high school students to end the semester before Christmas. There are. But we've also been very candid about the fact that what we really want is all of our schools to start August 10th. We want all of them to start. And we're still working on that, and we think that there's a good chance that our elementary schools will be able to start August 10th.
So why don't we wait until they all can before putting hardships on families?
That's what's happened in the past. And I wrote a letter to folks at the Journal, and one of the things I said is the school board could have very easily just said, no, we're going to start everybody on August 17th next year, and then nothing would have been reported, nobody would have been upset. I want the legislature to realize this is a big deal. So maybe...
So punishing parents to teach the legislature?
Well, is it punish? There's disagreement, but it's not punishing when at least 70% of the folks said, yeah, we're willing to give it a chance. That's not punishing.
Financially, it is. And taking away, how many students do you think are going to skip that first week of school, or the elementary school kids the last week in May?
What if a high school student gets a 3 on an AP test that they would have gotten a 2 on because they got 5 more days of instruction? There's a financial consequence there. So I can argue that both ways. That's what I'm saying.
The most affected people, the percentage of how many people are affected is much greater by making the change independently.
I don't
wait until we have everybody.
I don't
do it at the
disagree,
same time.
and we probably need to meet sometime, and I'll be happy. We can talk, and we can, again, there are pros and cons, and we've never presented it that everybody's in favor and there are no negatives to this. We've said that. We said there are negatives to this. And our goal is to have everybody start at the same time. But we felt like that the benefits outweighed the negatives. We're working to find ways to help families who are going to experience some difficulty in this, but under no circumstances did we lie. And I just resent the fact that you essentially called me a liar, because that didn't happen. We may disagree, and we can disagree, but I didn't lie to the public.
And I think, all 5 of the board members, we agree that there's a better way to do things, and that's for everyone to start at the same time. That's our goal. Right now, we didn't have that option. Hopefully we will before August of 2020.
So there's no need to rush into that until we can, because there's a large percentage of your parents who are going to face that financial hardship, and they're also going to lose family. So that's my point with that.
Board, appreciate your comments. Anyone else, Ms. Gibson? No. Next, discussion items, September financial report. Ms. Moore.
Well, I looked over the report a second time before I came in here, and I didn't find anything that I thought was particularly out of order, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Haven't received a lot of money yet, have we?
Not a lot, but we're about to turn the corner.
Yeah.
October's the magic month.
Tax bills came, last week, I think.
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. Rucat, you have a question?
Yes, very last screen, go all the way down to the bottom. I thought maybe Lisa probably did this for me. Handwriting curriculum and supplies.
That's for the Zahner Blotzer materials, yes, sir.
But that's not new. We've been buying that for several years.
Well, I was just going to ask, is there cursive writing included?
There is cursive writing, yes, sir.
I wanted everybody else to know now. Okay, I just wanted to make certain, and I
Yes, sir.
deeply appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else, Ms. Moore? 2019 South Carolina School Board Association voting delegates. Dr. Thorson.
Yes, so there is a School Boards Association conference coming up, and the school district of Oconee County gets 4 votes. So you need to take action tonight on who will have those 4 votes. And I do believe that it's even permissible for one person to
Cast all 4.
cast all 4, or 2 people to cast 2 each. Any kind of combination that the board decides is appropriate. So based on which of you are attending the conference and who wants to cast the votes, we just need you to to make a recommendation for that.
Is there anyone else that does not plan to go? You're not going, Ms. McCoy?
We're going.
That's easy.
We just got our 4.
That makes it easy.
And I
care of
think they'll vote next week on this, so you'll vote. We just needed to make sure that you kind of had a plan, and we'll make sure that's on the agenda for approval next week, so that Mr. Herring, Mr. Rucat, Dr. Sloan, and Mr. Lee would be the 4 voting delegates at that conference.
School report card update. Dr. Bibb.
Okay, so I want to present the 7 criteria that are used to determine the overall rating for a school. It could be up to 7, depending on if it's elementary, middle, and high. There are 10 categories reported. 3 of them don't have any kind of rating assigned to it, but the other 7 do. So it's a pretty involved process. I'm trying to kind of walk the fine line between, I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but I want you to have kind of a working knowledge of, be able to sort of picture how these numbers are generated. Can I use this or no? Okay, so this comes from the accountability manual. The goal of our system is to improve teaching and learning, to equip students, and then the second one is we want to ensure that students graduate so that they embody what we refer to as the profile of the South Carolina graduate. And there are the 3 categories that make up the profile of a South Carolina graduate: world-class knowledge, world-class skills, life and career characteristics. So, now looking at the ratings themselves, a school gets an overall rating, which comes about from adding up those other categories, and which could possibly add up to 100 points. Each one generating a certain percentage of that, and then in the end, add up, look at a table that was determined by the oversight committee, and there's their overall rating. So when we say rating, what are we referring to? Well, the rating could be excellent, good, average, below average, unsatisfactory. By each of these, you'll see a number in parentheses, a percentage. Those numbers were from 2018 when we first started this, using this accountability system. The oversight committee determined that 15% of all the schools were going to be excellent, 20% would be good, and so forth. That restriction's been lifted now, so in other words, they could be less than 15 or more than 15% that are excellent in 2019. But the tables that were generated, so to speak, based on forcing those percentages are still being used. So that did change. You'll see some examples of, or some of the tables in the slides to come. So the percents are not restricted until, well, I guess until the oversight committee decides to revisit that on when that would be, but certainly not this year. This is kind of hard to read, but this is what I mean by the 7 categories. If you look over on the left, first column, academic achievement, preparing for success, student progress, student engagement, the ELL section, grad rate, college and career readiness. You get so many points for each category, and those could theoretically add up to 100. Notice the elementary middle is different from high school. Obviously, elementary middle wouldn't have a grad rate and would not have the college and career ready category either. And then it's further subdivided depending on if you have a number of ESOL students. The magic number is 20. If there are 20 ESOL students in a school that are going to be tested, then you would use the column that says with ELLs. If you don't have that many, you use the column that says without ELL. Then once you do all that, you then can determine the overall rating of excellent, good, average, below average, unsatisfactory. And I assume Dr. Thorson may correct me here if I'm wrong, but notice that each level is different. And again, that goes back to the first year, last year, when they said 15% of the schools are going to be excellent. So for that to happen, then the excellent category needs to be 61 through 100 for elementary. And so that has remained consistent in 2019. So we may have more than 15% or less. But that's the one thing that is still a carryover from last year. As are all these others. Again, here are the 7 categories, and this tells you where do you get those numbers. For academic achievement, you get them from the student's state assessment on ELA and math. And for grades 3 through 8, that'd be SC Ready. For high school students, it'd be the end of course test, either Algebra 1 or, in days gone by, English 1. It's about, we switched over to English 2 coming up this year moving forward. Student progress, the state looks at how do students grow. If they have 2 years worth of scores, a student has a 4th grade score and a 5th grade score, how much do they improve? By state law, what's called a growth model has to be used. A company called Education Analytics was hired to do all of this. So it's hard for us to kind of see every little thing under the hood there. But anyway, the 2 main points are that you're looking at 2 years worth of scores, and then you're looking at 2 categories as well. First of all, you take all students, then you go look at the bottom 20% of that school, and they generate a number as well. Then those 2 numbers are averaged together. Number 3, preparing for success is very similar to the number 1 up there, except you're using now science and social studies. So for 3 through 8, it would be our SC Pass testing system, program. For high school, it would be biology, U.S. history. ELL, we're looking at how are those students progressing as far as learning, mastering the English language, and I have a table that shows that coming up. College and career ready, there are certain things that that a student achieves to become college ready, another for career ready, and we look at what percentage of your graduating class meets at least one of those criteria. Grad rate, school quality is a survey that students take, and it's based on their answers. It's determining whether they feel engaged in their school or not. And we look at the percentage of those who feel like they're engaged, and points are generated there. So just for this first category, I kind of threw in some details, but just to give you an idea of when I say points, what am I talking about? Well, this is the one where we use the students' ELA and math score. Let's take SC Ready. You can score a 1, 2, 3, or 4 on the test. We call that not met, approaching, met, exceeding. So let's say we got, 400 kids in the school. You take all their scores and you add them up. Then there's a denominator. That is, what would that point total be if every kid scored a 4? In other words, how many possible points are there? So let's say that school could have had 800 total. They scored 600, so it's 600 out of 800, 75%. So once they determine, I forgot to bring my notes. Can I hurry? Yeah, for this one, once you come up with that fraction, basically, how many did you earn divided by how many could you have earned, then you multiply that by 10. I believe I used 75% times 10 is 7.5. You look it up in the table, and there's your rating for that category. So each of the 7 categories get a rating as well as the overall rating.
And Dr. Bill, just to help them with what you just said, if you look at this table that I've given you, which is the landscape page of the 2, you can see, like if we look at the elementary side, there's 6 different categories, and we've got a color scheme in there. Well, that color scheme would tell you where that school ranked in each individual category as well as the overall at the end. So you can see it's possible for a school to get below average on something, excellent on something, average on something, and then all of those are combined to get the overall score.
This slide I just included to show you that high school, the concept is the same, it's just a little bit different because, on those in the course test you can earn an A through an F. So points are generated based on that, and then the same kind of math is done again. How many did you earn? How many could you have earned? Multiply it times whatever the appropriate multiplier is, and there's your category, there's your rating for academic achievement. The student progress, that's the one I said that the state hired an outside agency to create a model just to try to describe it, I guess, from 10,000 foot altitude. Think of taking a student's score and looking at his prior scores and compare him to other students from around the state who have a similar prior achievement. From that, they predict, here's how much you should grow. That's where it gets its name, the growth model. And then from there, an index is created and so on and so forth. I guess the takeaway here, the big takeaway I mentioned I think earlier, you're looking at 2 categories of students, the whole school and then also the bottom 20%. So those bottom 20% get counted twice. They're in the all students, but they're also over here by themselves. So this kind of forces the school to really focus on trying to improve scores, because those students in the bottom 20% counted in both categories. And it gives schools a chance to really make some improvement as well, as you'll see some of ours did. Okay, according to my watch, my 10 minutes is already up, but I guess I should keep going. This is just, again, I'm not going to go through each one. It was just very similar to the ELA and math. There's the tables that say, if you score this, here are the points generated. And again, the concept is the same. what fraction of points did you earn, you know, and then multiply it times whatever the appropriate number is, depending on what part of that 100 points that one covers. Again, that's high school. We use A through F instead of not met, met, etc. Okay, school quality. A company, Advanced Ed, hosted this online survey for students to take. It's not a test, so to speak, with right or wrong answers. It's a survey to try to measure how engaged is a student. Cognitive engagement, behavioral, and emotional. Each of those domains can be broken down into categories: committed, compliant, disengaged. The math part comes about by looking at how many students, when their data was scored, were rated as committed. And so you just simply take, say 500 students took the test, survey. 300 of the 500 were in the committed category. That's 60%. Take that percentage times a multiplier to get, then look in the table and see what that corresponds to in terms of the rate. This is some of that's repetitive. This just shows you where those, when the points are generated, you know, what will your rating be for school quality from excellent down to, did I do that? Okay. So that just shows you for excellent down to unsatisfactory where you may fall. Again, you see the percent committed category there. So if you look over on the left, that's elementary. If a school has between 75% and 100% students who show committed according to the survey, you get all 10 points that are available, and you get an excellent rating in that category. Okay, so I just put those to show you they're different depending on the level. Each elementary, middle, high has its own table. Okay, so let me move on to ELL. What we're looking for our ESOL students is when a new student comes to us who's ESOL, the teacher gives him or her a screener. That's what we call it. And they're scored either 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's kind of like the baseline. Here's where we're going to start. So let's say they get a 2. Then the first year they take their test called Access. We're looking for 2 things. Either they score a 4.4, and that exits them, or they can beat the intermediate goal, which is 2.6. So if you look at screener level 2, the first year we want them to score 2.6, and we keep track of this over time. The second year we want their composite to be 3.2, so on and so forth. So at the end, we look at, again, how many students in the ESOL group either had a 4.4 or they met one of those intermediate goals, compared to again, the denominator is always that total, and then from there you generate a rating for that category. Now, if a school has less than 20 tested, you won't see. They got to have 20 or more. And that just shows, you know, if a school has 80 to 100% meeting those targets I just described, you get an excellent rating in that category, and then you can see on down those now we get to college and career ready, coming into the home stretch here. This is for high schools. So to be college ready, a student needs to do one of these things listed here. We can look at their ACT score, their SAT score, an AP exam. We don't have IB, but, or can take 6 hours of dual enrollment courses with a grade of C or higher. Then there's a list that'll get you career ready. So if you went to graduation, you saw that class at Seneca High coming across the stage there. Let's say it was 300, and 150 of those had met one of those. Then they were college or career ready. They could be either one. Again, you just look at the percentage. 150 out of 300 be 50%. From that 50%, then a number is generated, and so they get a college and career ready rating somewhere between unsatisfactory and excellent. And there's the table I'm referring to. So if a school had 90% college/career ready, they get an excellent rating in that category. And a certain number of points are generated at the same time. Remember, you running a tally to try to get to 100 for your overall rating. Graduation rate, same group of kids I just described, and essentially you're looking at the percentage of students 4 years ago entered the 9th grade, how many of them got a diploma. Those are called, if they got a diploma within 4 years, those are called on-time graduates. Let's say it was 90%, then you subtract 50 from that would be 40, divided by 2 is 20, and that tells you how many points you earned for that category. Why is it a 25-point scale and a 30-point scale? Because you may have the ELL population that counts, or you may not. If you remember that one of those first tables I showed, it was with the ELLs, not without ELLs. And that, all right, let's go past there. This is probably what I know least about, which is when is there an intervention? Now, in days gone by, if your overall rating was, say, unsatisfactory, certain things happened. It's not that straightforward anymore. They look at yeah, let me look right here. So they, for example, number one, a priority school is comparing school A with other schools like it around the state, and are they in the 10th percentile or lower? If so, that is considered a priority school, and if it's a high school and they have a less than 70% graduation rate, they're automatically a priority school. Now, what does that mean when you become that? I don't exactly know. That's why I called the State Department last week and was hoping to get them to return my call before 6 o'clock tonight, and they did not. So we are waiting on information about this sort of thing, and we can report that to you once we get it. If a Title I school is at or below the 5th percentile, then let's see. That's a list called CSI designation. The state or the oversight committee is generating lots of lists based on report card scores now, and it's what's the good word for what it is, Miss Simmons? Complex. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Convoluted. Well, I didn't say that, but anyway. At some point, schools that are identified, and by the way, they can be identified based on just one of their subgroups not performing at a certain level, not just the overall rating. But there is then some criteria set for how you exit this status over time. I don't know if it's 2 years or longer, but again, when we get information from the state on this, we can report that out to you. Yes.
It looks like 10% of the schools in the state of South Carolina will be a priority school, period. Is that not correct? In other words, it's a bell-shaped curve, and someone's going to be a,
Yeah, there's
in a
no
10%
reference, yeah, they're
bucket.
forcing 10% to be this.
But that's 10% of the, and then you could be adding more because high schools, they have a different criteria.
Right, but I'm thinking of our
At
situation.
least 10%.
There's going to be a set of schools that are in that category.
No matter what. I mean,
No matter
There's
what.
gonna be every year.
Right, because if you're running like something like a bell-shaped curve, you're gonna have that even if your data is skewed to the left. In other words, to say like all A's, you're gonna have 10% of those kids sitting there
That's right.
in that category.
Even if the 10th percentile was 90%.
Yes.
I mean, even if you scored,
Yes.
if you were a 90A instead of a 99A.
Right, it's gonna be
The question
10%
is-
of the population of the schools.
If all the schools became excellent,
There's gonna be 10%.
there's gonna be 10% of schools that are rated excellent, but still considered
If we're
priority
reading
schools.
that correctly, and I wanna make certain everybody knows that there's gonna be 10%,
Yeah,
period.
Correct.
Okay?
yeah. That's probably not gonna happen that they would be good or excellent schools that would be in the bottom
But no,
10%, but
there's
it's
gonna be-
theoretically possible.
Theoretically, you will have 10% if you want these calculations to be accurate. And you're also saying, you're counting 20% of your lowest students, right, twice?
Yes.
So you're putting a weight on that the lower 20%.
Right.
Yes.
And then the
That's what-
question becomes, if your school does not have a significant number of below average students, that's gonna be good for them. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if you got,
It's still gonna be your bottom 20%.
it's still gonna be
And they still
20%,
gotta
but if your
grow a certain
20%
amount.
is substantially above average, that's not gonna hurt you. It's gonna
It's-
actually could help you.
No, at that,
You see what I'm getting
because,
at, because I'm counting them twice.
but they're only counted twice in the growth measure. So that's basically saying, we're gonna take the bottom 20% of performing students, and we're gonna measure how they did from year 1 to year 2, and we're gonna measure that growth. So so no matter where they're performing, that 20% could be performing really, really low, or
Really
if
low.
they were in a high-performing school, maybe they're performing kind of mid-range. We're only evaluating how much they grow, not where they
Not
land.
they were. Okay.
Not where they started, it's just how
Okay.
much they grow. So that's one reason I kind of, I'm not sure I agree with school report cards to begin with, but if you're gonna do a school report card, I think growth needs to play a very major role in the evaluation. So I do like that counts significantly in this report card.
This one topic is where there was the creation of 2 camps, when it was back when there was the dialogue of, when it was still up for debate as to exactly how it's going to flesh out. The high-performing schools didn't want that part,
Right.
but the schools where there's lots of room for improvement, they did want it.
Because somewhere along the line, after you start improving, your window of improvement, that range is going to get tighter and tighter, is it not? And then somewhere along the line, you're not going to be able to perform at the same level you had in the past.
Right. There are some
So
schools
that's-
in South Carolina whose students come into the 4th grade already having mastered 4th grade math, just because of the families they live in, the value that parents place on education, things like that. So that first category you know, those schools are already gonna knock the top off of that category. But this growth category,
category
they
is gonna
still
be a
have
problem
to
for
take
them.
those students and move them from 4th grade to 5th grade if they're gonna show growth.
performance.
And
That's
it
right.
gets harder and harder.
It does, the higher
higher you get,
performing they
the
are.
higher performing.
That's right.
That's the last one. I keep forgetting I have the, and I got the steering wheel. That is, yep.
Thank
I have a
you.
question.
Okay.
Did a committee put this thing together, or somebody have a bad nightmare?
I'm not sure about the nightmare part, but I do know that it was basically the Education Oversight Committee. This was their work.
But I will say they at least gave educators across our state an opportunity to chime in and to express opinions. I'm not sure they necessarily listened to all those opinions, but they did hear people as they were developing this, and they did make some changes as they went through the process.
I'm going to ask a dumb question. Out of everything you said, what is the best section? In other words, if I was a principal, where could I get my best bang for the buck?
Bottom 20%.
Did I say that right?
Well,
Bottom 20%.
Pardon me?
Bottom 20%.
moving that bottom 20%.
Twice.
Yep. So in other words, if I'm staring at my 20% and really working with them, I get probably a pretty good gain, a real good gain.
Yep.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So then, the year after that, you set the bar high, now you got.
Yeah, no, I'm
You
gonna,
gotta
Trip
keep it up.
I understand. Thank you.
All right.
It's a futile effort.
You can get caught. You get burnt eventually.
Thank you, Dr. Bibb. Okay, 2020 board meeting dates, Mr. Handy.
Yes, a couple years ago, the legislature decided to change when we should do it. Instead of doing it for a school year, we now have to do it for a calendar year. So we are looking at the January 2020, actually it should, January 2020 through December 2020. The only difference, really, Ms. Gibson matched up next year's meetings with this year's meeting. The only difference is, I need to make note of, is April went to one combined meeting with spring break and that. We used to do that anyway, and the way the dates fell, coming right back after spring break and that, we combined them to go to one meeting for that month, like we do in the summer. So the rest of them, I'm not sure whose turn it is to host summer graduation and those things, but the rest of them are, you know, the second, third Monday or either combined.
Just a carbon copy of this year's,
It
basically.
is, it just flipped it up one year.
All Mondays except for
Yeah.
January 20th is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and we're out of school that day, so that one's a
Right.
Tuesday.
So we'll get you to vote on that next week.
Next week.
And so we can get those, we have to have them in as approved.
I believe you have the rest,
I do, and
the policies and everything.
I want to jump down to Exhibit 5 first, if I can, the administrative rule, because it's, well, I don't want to do that. The only change on policy JFB is the second bullet. Remember last year we changed it and we did the first Friday in June, so we'd have a consistent date and wouldn't have to keep coming back changing the form. Well, we took the form out of the policy, so we wouldn't have to keep changing it, but we forgot to change the June 30th date. So that's the only change in the main policy, is that it will consistently be the first Friday in June as our deadline. That was not a major issue this year. Most people, we blitz it enough out that people know when they get that in. So where some questions have come up and some consideration for change has come up is with the criteria for what makes you eligible for school choice. So you've got JFB-R with the changes on it, and you also at your place have a table that says school choice numbers comparing current policy requirements with recommended changes. Now, these changes came out of discussion with Ms. Hughes and our principals. Okay, so we did, it's not, and actually the changes that they wanted to make were a little bit more, what's the right word? Strict, tighter than what the admin team proposed. Now, we bring that to you, and we know we have first reading, voting, and voting, so that if you guys want to have us make changes, we got a principals meeting come up, we can do those kind of things and that. But if you look at discipline record, we have the elementary criteria, and before it included 1 day of out-of-school suspension or 3 days of in-school made you ineligible. They want to remove the out-of-school part and just do 3 days of in-school. You can't have any out-of-school suspensions in elementary school. Okay, and we'll talk about the numbers in a minute. In middle and high, going from 3 days of out-of-school to no more than 1 day of out-of-school or 3 days of in-school suspension. Attendance records. The numbers that we have on there, we look back for 2 years. If you've had an attendance plan for 2 years, we did a pretty good job at the elementary level. We did a really good job catching up at the elementary level of doing attendance plans when we needed to. But because some schools missed, like at the end of the year, maybe in May, somebody went over the limit, that kind of thing, and they didn't get their attendance plan in, Ms. Hughes recommended that we include 10 days of unexcused absences or an attendance plan the last 2 years. Because if you got 10 days of unexcused absences, you should be put on an attendance plan. So those are the same for all grade levels. And then in academic performance, elementary doesn't change. Basically, if you're able to be promoted to the next grade, then you're eligible. In middle and high, it currently says you can fail no more than 2 classes. They asked that we change that to 0. We put 1 because some kids may struggle with a teacher or a class, and we just thought that we maybe need to give them that opportunity. So if you look at the chart, and you can see Stephanie Vicious did this for me. You've got at the top the elementary students, and in 18-19 is the data. So we had 4,464 students, and not eligible because they didn't pass a grade was 89. The new policy wouldn't change that in the last column. Intervention plans over the last 2 years, 1,197. We found 4 kids who had 10 unexcused absences who would have been added to that list that wouldn't be eligible. 3 or more days of ISS, that would not change, so that was 21 students who were ineligible because of that. Now there is a change here. Having OSS more than 1 day, there were 64 kids not eligible last year because of that. If you make the change where you don't allow even a day of OSS, then that number goes to 164. So the red numbers are the changes with a policy change.
So that's how many more students would be excluded from school choice are the red numbers, correct?
Correct. That's how many more, looking at that 18-19 numbers and statistics, it would be. So next you have middle and high, and you see it's a little over 6,000 students, and I just did this one in 2 separate charts because it was just easier for me. But if you see the last chart, the difference is if you go to failing 1 grade, then we have 129, students that wouldn't be eligible, okay, because they failed 2 instead of 1. Attendance intervention plans, there were 96 more. The high schools and middle schools honestly don't do as quite a good job as on intervention plans as the elementary does. So there were 96 that had 10 unexcused absences last year. Again, that 1534 number is over 2 years. Okay, the ISS wouldn't change because we're not asking for that to change. The most significant change is the OSS one, and there would be 180 more that would be ineligible because they had an incident where they had more than 1 day of OSS.
And these changes are basically recommended coming from principals then?
Ms. Hughes had them and met with the principals at the principals meeting, and they came to us and we shared the information at the last month's principal meeting in a full discussion. And again, I sent out a reminder with our recommended change because, again, they wanted to do, it was really mainly the middle and high school, they wanted to do no failing grades. Okay, I didn't look to see how many more that would exclude, but, and they wanted to do no OSS. We kind of felt like, again, you might have a teacher that you don't jihad with, and we didn't want to go too far with it. But I mean, their point was, I mean, 60's passing now, so, you know, that's not that hard to get when we got a floor grade and those kind of things. The OSS one was another one. They said if you get in trouble and that, you shouldn't be eligible to move around and be a problem somewhere else. So we kind of found a happy medium. We felt like that, you know, kids will make mistakes and they shouldn't have it take away everything, but at the same time, it is a privilege to do school choice, and you know, there are certain guidelines. If the changes are implemented, if this is what you guys agree and do what is recommended, then the students who are currently this year on school choice would stay under the same criteria we have now.
Yeah.
Okay? New students would be under the new criteria if you apply for it. Next year, everybody would know the new one. So if you were currently on school choice, you would meet what we currently have and still be eligible to stay at school because we'd be implementing it halfway through the year.
Yeah.
But it will be before school choice next year, so if James were to come back and he was a junior and he decided he wanted to go to Seneca or West Oak and he didn't have, you know, those, then he could go.
Is this going to affect our staffing?
No, we don't let school choice, well, we do our best not to let school choice affect staffing. Now, once you get in, you stay in, but like this year, we had to, at several schools, we had to close off certain grade levels because what we've done is we've kind of calculated a formula. It's more, it really doesn't affect middle and high that much because theirs is like 19 and 20 and a half to 1. But at the elementary schools, you know, we've kind of calculated, let's say if you're at Ravenel and she's got 4 fourth grade classes, we know that the maximum number of kids is 92. Sorry, that's third grade classes, 92. So what we're going to do is take the number of classrooms you have, which is 4, and give you a growth of 2. So we would stop them at 82. Like we would say, no more school choice. Because what happens in the summer is kids move and come in, and we get very close to that number. An example is like Ravenel's 4th grade was cut off. Walhalla L's 1st and 4th grade were cut off. Northside had a grade that was cut off. And once we get to that point, we don't let anybody else go. We tell them up front, we put on the form. There'll be no choice to 4th grade at this school or 3rd grade at this school because we don't want to add personnel.
Anything else, Mr. Henry?
No, sir, I think that was it.
Questions?
If I could just say one thing, I just want to say it publicly because the public comment was obviously in the public. I shouldn't have lost my cool a little bit like I did earlier.
You didn't say anything else.
Well, I still should have kept my frustration level down a little bit, and I will apologize to Mr. Underwood, just because I should have handled that in a little more professional way. So anyway,
He was going by what he read and not being here, and can't do that.
so maybe the paper's guilty more than anybody.
Okay, next on the agenda is an executive session for personnel items, employment recommendations and changes, and update on the Seneca Middle School property. Without objection, we will move into closed session. We will be in closed session and will return shortly for any action. And thank you for being here.